If someone says the words Polyphony digital and you're someone who knows even a bit about PlayStation games, probably the first association that comes to mind would be the wildly successful and ongoing Gran Turismo series, a series that really struck like a goldmine. But of course, if we were covering that, it wouldn't be this channel that only reviews and talks about niche things no one except me really cares about very much, which is totally not the reason this video took fucking 7 months to come out. In fact, the way I discovered today's game was finding feeder songs on the Gran Turismo soundtracks. Yeah, someone at Polyphony must have been a massive fan back in the day. All of which brings us to 1999's Omega Boost. Polyphony's PlayStation 1 shoot-'em-up. On-a-rail shooter, sci-fi shooter. Honestly, who knows what genre this game actually falls into, but it is actually an interesting, forgotten and overshadowed title. Knowing 90s Japanese game design, this was probably made in a relatively short amount of time too, because Gran Turismo 2 came out the same year. Interestingly, the game starts with live-action CGI blend, but unfortunately PlayStation compressed intro, which although cheesy, is actually kind of cool, and covers most of what you'll be doing in the game. Also, it introduces the story, but to be honest, it's so minimal that it's kind of unimportant. Wisecracking cool guy takes on alien monsters. The menu is quite neat, and I always appreciate the addition of practice levels to get to grips with the game's mechanics and controls. Trust me when I say, you're gonna need them for this game. In fact, the controls can get a bit confusing since there's usually two buttons that do very similar things, and the movement is kind of clunky. Now that may be because about 2 hours into playing the game I realised the controller I was using had a broken joystick with a crap ton of stick drift, but even still it was kind of hard to control with a functioning control method. I know it's supposed to be an on-rail shooter, but you really kind of just blast everything and hope for the best. I understand it's a 90s PS1 game too, and all this information was in the manuals I don't check because I'm a dipshit, but hell, I didn't know you could lock onto enemies until I was halfway through the game. To talk about a more positive aspect though, the graphics have aged pretty well. It's got that blocky PS1 look, but the art direction still manages to make it somehow look sleek and sophisticated in a sci-fi way. Also, an impressive amount of particles because stuff is happening! And of course 90s technological screen effects are currently trending, so I'd say they did a pretty good job. The enemy variety is pretty great too. You can get some that function similarly to each other, but let's be honest, this is a shooter. You're dealing with all of them the same way anyway. So at least it's nice to have a variety of things to look at before you blast them to bits. This can be said for the levels, although they and even their individual sections can vary in difficulty pretty hard. The game only has 2 difficulty settings, none of which are really that forgiving, so you better be awake while playing. Another thing to appreciate about the presentation is that while the music, which is another thing that's aged very well, is in the background but not being overly loopy and annoying, and not too balls to walls either, it's there but it doesn't hinder you. And it certainly doesn't take away from the sense of pure velocity this game has, especially in things like the tunnel level or flying around some huge space megastructure. Oh god, tunnels, sci-fi, weird designs, it's Ace Combat 3 all over again. Now, reviews have complained about the game being too short, but to be honest, considering how much stuff it crams in the estimated 3 hours, which by the way it took me a lot longer, I think the length is fine and doesn't bother me. Some of the fights are pretty tricky, so it could take you a couple tries to beat them. Oh damn it. Dang. Wait, what? What? Yes, so it turns out for some reason if you fail a section more than 5 times, the game just ends. Also, if you quit, there's no saving option. I know it's based on arcade shooters and that's where something like this would make sense, but not on a home console game that you spend more than an hour on. Imagine failing at the last level. Well, sorry buddy, guess you're gonna have to go and start from the beginning of the entire f***ing game. Who thought this was a good idea? As far as I'm aware, none of the Polyphony's other games have this issue, and this was 1999. I looked online, there is no other solution. The PlayStation had memory cards. Was it too much to ask to at least have a save feature for each zone? That's my major gripe with this game. I think a crash out is justified if you lose hours of progress, especially in a game as challenging as this, because of something that should be a basic feature. Maybe I'd understand if this was some hardcore difficulty, but I'm playing on normal. Well, at least by the time you've gone through the game again, or several more times if you got your ass kicked,
That's right, we're gonna cheat.
you should feel comfortable enough with it to get a better look at the trippy yet frankly beautiful visuals in some of the final levels. Now, usually I would complain that there's too much stuff happening and you can't understand what's going on, but as long as you whiz around and hold the fire button, you'll probably get it eventually. And for an art direction this good, I think it's justified as a climax. And hey, if you do make it to the end, the music from the intro kicks in, which would be Feeder's Shade for me, because you know we cover Japanese as originally intended versions because that makes them superior somehow. I just like Feeder more than the alternate songs. I have to admit, the final boss fight with some cosmic horror angel beyond our comprehension is pretty kick-ass though. And then so I guess we're the virus now. Well, I guess we're in the electrosphere again. Then there's a slightly mysterious cutscene with the ending line.
This tube will embark mankind's peaceful coexistence with artificial intelligence.
I'm not sure why it was said so ominously, but oh, and yep, it's over. That's as far as she goes, really. I think this is definitely a good game with some rather stunning visuals and great aesthetic, not to mention art direction, as well as the unique twist of so-called 360 degrees of rotation that you don't see on many other PS1 games. Look at the giant gun on the cover. And suffering from should have been on the PS2 itis, but it's the little things, probably as a result of the frantic development cycle that let it down. The clunky controls, the total absence of even a basic save feature that doesn't require beating the entire thing in one sitting, because unless you really like it, that's sort of the kind of game this is. I feel like it had more potential to offer, so it sucks it's kind of been laying in the Polyphony shadow of forgotten games, but it is at least an interesting departure from what they usually do. So if you're interested, check it out. And with that, this will be me signing off.